Many people are going through new experiences lately, novel experiences that they've never had before. And having had some experience with that sort of thing, I thought it was time I started sharing what I've learned over the past 7 or 8 years since I started having these weird and wonderful communications, intuitive and synchronistic experiences, and how I've navigated them. Started back in 2005 in November, when I was trying to figure out a solution, basically, to, well, the wars and stuff in general, after having invested my ego in providing an answer for somebody. I had to sort of come up with a better explanation than, I just know. So I started looking for answers. I'd already, already understood it quite a bit about what I later came to know as the universal law, as opposed to law, LAW law. The logic. To me, after much awesome experience with, crazy stuff that would send most people running to their nearest exorcist, I just allowed all that stuff to happen and just took what I could from it, learned from it. Because it all started when I was a kid. I had very lucid dreams when I was very young, and even some lucid flying dreams. I sort of fly in my dreams, jump and fly from tree to treetop or stay polar, and sometimes I could fly really high. And at times I was lucid. I knew I was dreaming, and I could do anything I wanted to. And after I started primary school, things started to slow down, and the programming set in, and that all disappeared. But I always knew there was something more, so I was never really locked into this monodimensional linear thinking that most people are. And because of that, I had a hard time at school, being an immigrant and all that, and dealt with a lot of limitation in my childhood. So I spent most of my life trying to understand what everything is all about. Just why are people like this? Why are people so brutal towards each other, to other people? Why do they have to prove something to someone else? And it didn't make sense. And I later realised I had to pretty much let go of everything I learned at school, everything I believed. I realised later on in life that the way we learn at school, it's a linear, it's a programming. It's just like you program a computer. You have to sit there in school, concentrate in a linear fashion on a certain topic, and if you don't, well, you're not going to get your questions right. I had a habit of daydreaming, they called it, where I'd go off on a tangent. I'd see something in a lesson, a video we were watching, whatever. It'd take me off on a tangent. I'd go off on these little tangents and start, looking at them with my own experiences in the background and connecting my own dots. And then I realised I'd missed half the lesson, and I'd come back to it, and really, while I'd learned something for myself, I wasn't learning what I was supposed to be learning, according to the teachers. And of course I couldn't answer all the questions in my tests. So I never got really good grades, but I did learn a lot. I learned my own way. The thing about education, I didn't like education at all. I hated it. In fact, it was terrible. It was just routine. It was conformity. It was concentration. That which you're going to have to use in life if you want to actually build something or make something. You have to employ it. That's part of the deal. But I guess I had other ideas about what I wanted in life, and I just wanted to know everything. And for that purpose, you don't need concentration at all. In fact, you need to get rid of it. You need to just let things go, as I found out later in life. And I've been doing that all my life. So, rather than becoming a nice little machine, a robot that just regurgitates everything it's taught, everything it's told, everything it's been programmed to believe, I started thinking to myself, teacher's worst nightmare. And I just refused to conform. So, and I found that very handy. Once I started my working life, in fact, to look at things from a different point of view, to not go by the old, that's the way we always did it, routine. Because everything you do is different. You can't just apply one rule to everything. So you got to consider everything you're doing. There's always a different purpose. It's all specific. Everything you do has specific purposes you got to meet. And the same old solution is not going to solve every one of those. You might be able to solve most of it, but you're going to have something that you're not happy with. And I was never happy until my job was perfect. It served every purpose that it was meant to. And for that, I had to do a lot of lateral thinking, which I got good at, and I enjoyed doing different things. As soon as I got proficient at something, I became tired of that, and I wanted to try something else, which gave me a great diversity of knowledge, we'll say, and skills. Well, not necessarily knowledge. Knowledge is basically a belief. Okay, it's nothing more than a belief unless you know it for yourself, unless you learned it for yourself. You've experienced it. Well, it's just a belief. Once you know it, that it's knowing. Okay, you know it. You can't really say you know something from believing it, or even from seeing it. You got to experience it, because I'll go into there's a big difference between belief and knowing. A huge difference, and it's an inverse relationship. You can't have one and the other. They don't serve the same purpose. They serve opposing purposes. And that's really what I want to talk about. First and foremost, is belief versus knowing. Now, belief is very linear, very monodimensional, very rigid. It doesn't come from experience. It doesn't come from our own experience. It comes from somebody else. It's a label. It's like if you go on a holiday and you go to visit a forest, and you roll up to the entrance and there's a sign with a whole lot of words and pictures describing what lies beyond. And a lot of people just read the sign, turn around and go home. And they think they know the forest because somebody told them what it's about. Really, you don't have any idea. You can't see any further past that sign. When you go to revisit that belief and try and expand on it, try and find something, you can't. You don't have the experience. It's just a label you have in memory, and that fades over time as well. It needs to be constantly reinforced by repetition to get solidified in your brain, crystallized in your mind. The problem with belief is that you can't revisit it, you can't reevaluate it, because it's not yours. Now, even if you've read that sign and looked at the pictures, and then you go into the forest and you interpret your experience according to those beliefs, that's still a limiting factor. So the way I like to approach stuff is to just go straight into the experience and experience it with a clean slate. Not try to judge everything adopted in the past, or even we do. You can't avoid it. You've got subconscious beliefs programmed into you since that first smack on the bum, which ow, that hurts. I don't want to go there. So you don't. You don't want to go there. You don't go there. If you've got a belief telling you don't want to go there, you're not going to go there. That's part of the problem. Knowing is is eternally multidimensional and expandable all the time, because you had the experience, you know all the facets of that experience, and you can look back on it. You can always find something new in it, something you've resisted about that experience in the past, and you can say, I can accept that now. There's a very important distinction between belief and knowing, is that they serve opposing purposes. Belief being a product of fear, basically, and it returns to fear as well. Because why do we believe in the first place? We don't know. We have a fear of not knowing, so we buy a belief that satisfies our fear of not knowing, but it's not really knowing, and it still causes us fear because we don't really know. When we have the experience from self-evidence, which we don't have as a child, until we can get out and start experiencing for ourselves. We do have some, but it takes a while. So childhood is a good time to not be impressed with programs. But it's the perfect time if you want to program somebody to punch in a whole bunch of programs before they get enough self-evidence from experience to join the dots for themselves. And this is what school did for me, and it does. It keeps us right through, especially in the earlier stages of school, from thinking for ourselves by keeping us busy, keeping us pressured by the clock. Concentrate, take in all this information, and write down the answers before the clock runs out. Otherwise you're going to fail. And that's not a way to learn. That's a way to remember. That's a way to be programmed. So you can do what you're told. So you can you can be controlled. You can be predicted, because you already have the program. At whatever stimulus is applied to that program, the prediction is known. The outcome is known, because the program is known, and it's all very divisive and criminal, to say the least, to do that to a young mind. But when you look at the bigger picture, there's a reason for it all. There's a purpose for everything. And one thing I found is that the higher I look, the further I look, the broader the perspective I try to encompass, the better everything is. Everything that we call good and bad is relative to a purpose. This is what I found out when I was trying to figure out what the thing is about all these wars. Well, what bloody purpose does a war serve? From what I see, it just hurts people, it kills people. But if you look for the higher purpose, the most encompassing purpose, then okay. What I tend to do when I'm searching for a purpose, I look at what something actually does. What does it do? What does it really do on the ground? Forget the beliefs and all that. What's it actually doing? And it's doing many things. It's doing really terrible things. It's doing mediocre things. And at one point, it's doing something that's very good, which is teaching me. I'm not concerned about anybody else. That's their experience. But when I have conflict, it teaches me to deal with conflict and to become better at dealing with conflict. So when I look at it from that purpose, conflict is good. And I had to ask the question, what is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of life? What is my purpose here in this life? And the highest purpose I could come up with again was to learn all about life.